anytime you go on the reservation and you go to any powwow or any kind of ceremony, the veterans are always mentioned. And there's always songs honoring the veterans. And you realize then how proud the families are and how proud the tribe is of the veterans. I don't think we realize the sacrifice it takes to give up everything and go to war. And even during wartime, you know, they enlist. And yeah, they're giving up part of their life. You know, just to, I don't think you can find people that are more patriotic than the Indian people. And it's really a love for this country. I guess we're probably the luckiest people in the world because of our freedoms. And you know, democracy really came from the Indian people. From, you know, anything from individual freedom to freedom of choice, individual freedom. All of, you know, these were all these freedoms were practiced by the Indian people for centuries and centuries. One of our very, very important values was the value of fortitude. To be able to keep going, you know, no matter how tough things got. You know, they managed to survive, and that was because of this value that they have of fortitude and bravery. You know, we weren't ever really told, you know, be brave and you know, these are values that we want you to learn, and they were never spelled out to us, but it was set by example. You know, they taught us by example. If you really look at the old people, they set an example for us of the values of bravery and fortitude, wisdom and generosity.
I had no idea what a powwow was before I went. As much as I had read about Indians and spoken in my family and this sort of thing. And I went down to this conference, and it was a 3-day conference, and the powwow, I believe, was the night of the second day. And the first day, there were a series of lectures, and we talked about post-traumatic stress and all these different things. And there was not a lot of patience among the participants for that sort of dialogue. It wasn't that it was irrelevant. It was just that wasn't the way that they were going to relate emotionally to this gathering. And they kept telling me, wait till the dancing starts. And it really was one of the most profound things I've ever experienced. The first one that they had, when 48 tribes were represented from around the country to come in and for the first time in the Intertribal Association context honor those who had served in Vietnam. When they went out for the special dance for the veterans in the first powwow, it really was one of the most powerful experiences I've ever seen. They started one at a time. They came in with the fancy dancers, the people who were dressed up, and they had M16s, and then the people who were Vietnam veterans were allowed to fall behind them, and then others fell behind the Vietnam veterans. I was allowed to go out and dance because I was a Vietnam veteran. And sort of snaked until they were in a circle, then they turned to the drum and they started screaming. And the guys were crying. There was one guy who was standing next to me who'd been with the 1st Air Cavalry. Imagine the paradox. Someone from a white culture looking at an individual who's got a blanket on, but half of it honors the Mexicans that they fought, whom they fear very strongly about. Half of it honors the cavalry that they fought in history, with the 1st Air Cav Custer's own patch on it in the back. The combination of that is paradoxical, and yet this guy, was a big man, was standing there, and the room was so filled with emotion, and his wife walked up behind him and put her hands on his back, and as soon as she touched him like that, he cried.
These power really do mean a lot to me. I feel that I'm here representing my tribe, the Indian around the country, and also veterans in general, the blacks, the whites, Mexican Americans, all those veterans that have served. I think that we're also honoring them. So it gives me special pride, to go step out there, hold a feather. It really does give me pride, I show that honor to myself and also to the veterans and our country in general.
So notice in the Gore dance that all the warriors face the drum, and technically no one's supposed to get in between other than warriors in the drum, because what you're doing out there is actually drawing power from the drum. And also from the songs. Those songs are warrior songs. They have been preserved and through time, and even in the words to those songs, there is power. There's medicine there.
Medicine in the words and in the song. An avenue, perhaps, to begin the treatment of Indian Vietnam veterans, but not the only one, and certainly not some sort of magic. As with any victim of massive traumatic shock, there is a lot of hard work to be done. There are many resources available to assist in treatment of the Indian veterans.
As far as my relatives and my home communities are concerned, they accepted me. I didn't volunteer to go over to Vietnam. I was drafted. I was forced to go. I went in, I served it, came back, and my relatives, my immediate family, they accepted me. And they noticed that I started experiencing a lot of social problem. I wasn't the same. I didn't really realize I have changed it that much. That's when they started talking about the Inamiri ceremony. And Inamiri ceremony is a 7-day ceremony. It's a ceremony which allows you to readjust back into society. I didn't completely believe in the ceremony, but I went through it. It did purify me. It's real. It's not something that is just symbolic. I found that it's real.
The warrior has to begin today, as he comes home, is to begin to purify himself. And that's going to take maybe a year, or 2 years, 3 years. Maybe some will take longer, because war is ugly and it leaves a lot of scars. And I think some of the boys, it's going to take a lot longer in that sweat lodge and pray. So these things will leave them. And because the sweat lodge takes care of 3 things that man is born with. That's the mental part of him, the physical part of him, and the spiritual part of him. And the biggest part of man is the spiritual part of him. So if you don't continue to fill that big void there, you're going to be off balance. You have to get yourself back in balance. These 3 things back in balance. And that's what the sweat lodge does. A lot of these Indian veterans go to a VA hospital. So they need a doctor, they need a psychologist, they need a doctor, a medical doctor for his body, and they need a minister or a priest for his spiritual part. If you come in a sweat lodge, that's all taken care of at once. All those 3 things that we're born with. And I think that's why a person comes in feeling bad, and when he comes out, he's imbalanced there for a while. And what he needs to do is keep that balance. Don't let it get unbalanced again. Keep that in balance, and you're going to be all right. And eventually they'll become a true warrior to their people. to be a good example to the young people.
Soldier boy.